In the lively town of Ibadan, there lived a successful merchant, Mallam Dantata. He was known for his wealth, integrity, and kindness, and his name was respected throughout the town. Despite all his worldly success, there was a deep sorrow in his life. His beloved wife, Zainab, had tragically passed away during childbirth, leaving behind their infant daughter, Zara. The loss of Zainab left a gaping hole in Mallam Dantata's heart. He tried his best to care for Zara. He knew she needed more than just a father's love. She needs a mother's nurturing touch. Zainab, whom everyone in town adored, had been a radiant soul, full of grace and kindness. Her marriage to Mallam Dantata had been the envy of many, a beautiful union between two people who genuinely loved each other. However, the sudden loss of Zainab shattered that perfect world, and the promise of a loving family was broken. Mallam Dantata found himself struggling to keep everything together. His grief was immense, but his love for Zara was unwavering, even though it was clear to him that she needed more than he could provide alone. Zainab's close friend, Aminat, had always been by her side. Aminat and Zainab had shared everything over the years: joy, pain, hopes, and dreams. They were inseparable, and their friendship was rooted in love and loyalty. However, there had always been some kind of jealousy in Aminat's heart, one she never voiced but always present whenever she saw Zainab and Mallam Dantata together. Aminat's own life had been less than ideal. Her marriage, unlike Zainab's, had been filled with constant struggles. Her husband, a man of modest means, was not always there for her. The affection that was so abundant in Zainab's marriage was scarce in hers. While Zainab lived a life of luxury, supported by a loving husband, Aminat often felt the weight of loneliness and disappointment. As the years went by, Aminat's envy of Zainab's perfect marriage grew. Every time she saw Zainab and Mallam Dantata together, laughing, enjoying each other's company, or simply holding hands, it stung deeply. It wasn't just the wealth that she was envious of, it was the love, the deep bond that they shared. Aminat often found herself thinking, why does she have it all? Zainab, on the other hand, never noticed the envy in Aminat's heart. She was too busy caring for her own family and nurturing the relationship she had with her husband. But Aminat's feelings slowly began to fester, and as the years passed, her marriage deteriorated even further. Her husband's business failed, and the strain of financial hardship only deepened the cracks in their relationship. While Zainab flourished in her marriage and lived a life of comfort and security, Aminat's marriage crumbled under the weight of neglect and financial struggles. The bitterness she felt towards her friend grew stronger. And then, tragedy struck. Zainab, in the prime of her life, died during childbirth, leaving behind a beautiful baby girl, Zara. Aminat, though devastated by the loss of her friend, could not help but feel a strange sense of relief. In her heart, she knew that this was her chance. This was the moment she could step into Zainab's life, raise her daughter, and perhaps, just perhaps, take her place. Zainab's final days were spent in a hospital bed, her health failing rapidly. As she lay there, struggling to breathe, she called Aminat to her side, grasping her friend's hand with surprising strength. Aminat, Zainab whispered, her voice faint, I need you to promise me something. Please, look after Zara. She is my heart. She will need a mother's care. I trust you, Aminat. You are the only one who can help her. Aminat fought back tears as she looked down at her friend, so frail and pale. I promise, Zainab, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I will take care of Zara. I will love her as if she were my own. I will never let her suffer. Zainab smiled weakly, her eyes filled with peace, as if knowing she was leaving her daughter in capable hands. Thank you, Aminat. I knew I could count on you. But as Zainab's life slipped away, Aminat's mind raced. This is my opportunity, she thought. I can give Zara a mother's love, and I can have everything I've always wanted. It was a cruel, selfish thought, but it consumed her. She would never admit it to anyone, but in her heart, she began to fantasize about a life where Zara's inheritance would one day be hers as well, and she would finally experience the kind of love and respect that had eluded her all these years. After Zainab's passing, Aminat took it upon herself to visit Mallam Dantata's house regularly, offering to help care for Zara during the difficult days that followed. Her presence was a comfort to Mallam Dantata, who was still grieving deeply and struggling to keep up with the demands of caring for his daughter. Aminat, always attentive and kind, would bring food, help with housework, and spend time with Zara, offering her gentle words of comfort. Mallam Dantata, seeing how Aminat acted as if she were a second mother to Zara, began to feel a growing sense of gratitude towards her. He began to rely on Aminat more and more, seeing her as a true friend and a kind-hearted woman. Zara found solace in Aminat's attention. Aminat's gentle presence, her warm smile, and the care she showed made Zara feel as though, perhaps, she could still have a mother. One day, as Aminat was helping to organize Zara's room, Mallam Dantata sat down with her in the living room. He looked at her, his eyes weary with the weight of loss, and said, Aminat, I have been thinking a lot about Zara. She needs a mother's love, and I cannot give that to her alone. You have been so kind to both of us, and I trust you. You have always been there for Zainab and now for me. I have come to a decision. Aminat's heart raced as she tried to maintain a calm expression. Could it be? She thought, could this be my chance? I have decided, Mallam Dantata continued, to make you my wife. I believe that together, we can provide Zara with the love and care she needs. You have been a true friend to my family, and I know you would be a good wife and mother. Will you marry me, Aminat? Aminat, though her heart was pounding, managed to keep her composure. She smiled softly and nodded. Of course, I will take care of Zara, just as I promised Zainab. Mallam Dantata's eyes softened with gratitude. I know I am making the right choice. I want us to be a family again, for Zara's sake. When they got married, Aminat moved into Mallam Dantata's house, and the couple began their new life together. Aminat continued to act kindly toward Zara in the beginning, just as she had promised. She helped with her studies, gave her affection, and tried to comfort her in the face of her mother's death. Zara, though weary and confused, allowed herself to hope that perhaps she could have a family again. However, it wasn't long before the true nature of Aminat's character began to emerge. Once the wedding had settled, Aminat's behavior started to change. Slowly but surely, she began to show her true colors. The sweet, caring woman who had once visited regularly to help Mallam Dantata and Zara now began to demand more from Zara, expecting her to do the housework while her own daughter, Aisha, was treated like a princess. Zara was expected to clean, cook, and carry heavy water pots, while Aisha played with her dolls and did nothing to help. At first, Zara did as she was told, not wanting to upset her new stepmother. But as the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months, the demands from Aminat grew more unbearable. Zara's small hands were worn from scrubbing the floors, and her eyes were heavy with exhaustion from the constant chores. Meanwhile, Aminat showered Aisha with love, buying her beautiful clothes and feeding her lavish meals, while Zara was given scraps. One day, after Zara had made a mistake while cleaning, Aminat snapped. "You lazy girl. Do it again," she yelled, her voice full of anger. "And this time, do it properly." Zara, stunned by the sudden outburst, stood frozen for a moment before turning to complete the task. But Aminat wasn't done. "You should be grateful that I'm here, helping you. If it weren't for me, you'd be nothing," she shouted, causing tears to well up in Zara's eyes. The once warm feeling of hope that Zara had felt began to wither. Aminat, the woman who had promised to love and care for her, had turned into something unrecognizable. The cruelty in her eyes was now undeniable. Zara's heart shattered as she realized that no matter how hard she worked, she would never be good enough for her stepmother. It wasn't long before Mallam Dantata began to notice the changes in Zara. He saw how distant she had become, how her once bright eyes were now dull with sadness. He noticed the exhaustion that seemed to weigh her down. Something was wrong. He had been too busy with his business to see it, but now, as he watched his daughter, the truth was clear. One evening, when he came home early from a trip, Mallam Dantata overheard Aminat's harsh words. Peering through the window, he saw her yelling at Zara, calling her lazy and worthless just like her late mother. Zara, her face streaked with tears, was scrubbing the floor on her knees, her hands raw and bleeding. His heart sank. He had made a terrible mistake. In that moment, Mallam Dantata knew he could no longer ignore Zara's suffering. The woman he had trusted to care for his daughter had become the source of her pain. The next day, Mallam Dantata confronted Aminat. "You have failed Zara," he said, his voice cold and filled with anger. "You promised to take care of her, but you have been cruel. I will not stand for it any longer." Aminat tried to defend herself, but Mallam Dantata was resolute. "Pack your things, Aminat. You and Aisha will leave my house. I will no longer allow you to hurt my daughter." With that, Aminat and Aisha were sent away. Mallam Dantata turned to Zara, his eyes filled with sorrow and regret. "I'm so sorry, my dear. I should have seen it sooner. I promise you, I will protect you from now on." Zara, though still hurt, finally felt the warmth of her father's love. She knew she would never be alone again. Together, they began anew, and the house that had once been filled with sorrow and resentment was now filled with laughter and love.